Good afternoon to you. It is 3:34. We are live from our Kingdom Financial Group studio here at Fifth and State, also live on YouTube and on Facebook. We're having the crucial conversations that Erie needs, and it's not very often that someone from Erie County runs for statewide office in any regard. But Attorney Matt Wolford is doing so. He's running for Commonwealth Court, and he's in our studio here in an exclusive interview. Attorney Wolford, Matt, good to see you. Welcome.
Good to see you. My pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me in.
We're a family show. We like to get origin stories. Tell us how you came up. Did you grow up here in Erie, or did you transplant in?
Yeah, no, I grew up in Erie. I went to McDowell. I wrestled for McDowell.
Oh, wow.
Went to Penn State undergrad, went to Temple Law School. And I thought I was going to stay on the East Coast after law school. I started practicing in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And
were you a white shoe attorney, or?
Well, I actually worked for the Attorney General's office.
Oh, okay.
I was personal injury defense for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Mostly PennDOT cases, but also state police, Department of Health, any state agency that got sued for personal injury. They actually get represented by the Attorney General's office.
I did not know they had that defense side of their work product, if you will.
Yeah. So my dad was a well-known lawyer in Erie around that time, and I graduated from law school, and I wanted to get into court. I wanted to learn how to litigate, and most of the time, litigators are sort of junior partners at law firms, so you have to wait a long time as an associate to actually get into court. So I called him and I said, "Hey, how do you get into court? Like, what's a good job to have?" And he said, "You want to go work for the Attorney General's office, torts litigation section." I had no idea what it was, but next thing you know, I'm defending PennDOT in Philadelphia, Chester County, Butler County, or Bucks County rather, Montgomery County, Delaware County.
Who was the AG at the time?
When I was hired, it was Roy Zimmerman.
Oh, sure.
And then shortly thereafter, it became Ernie Preate. And Ernie referred to us as the pothole people. Ernie and I are friends to this day.
Is that right?
Yeah, I saw him maybe 3 or 4 months ago.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine that you actually had a pretty good caseload.
Oh, it was unbelievable. That's how you learn how to litigate. The day that I started working, I'd never taken a deposition. I was 25 years old. And they said, "You're going to be in depositions all afternoon. You're taking them." And I was like, "What? I don't know how to do that." They said, "Here, read the script, listen to the answers, follow up, and you'll figure it out." And I did. So that was a great job.
How much of what you learned? I mean, because you have that rare situation there where you took tort at Temple, and then you were doing tort almost immediately.
Yep.
Did it match up with your schooling, you think?
No, because what happened?
No,
it doesn't. Law school doesn't match up with practicing law at all. What happens?
Oh my gosh!
What happens is when you go through law school, you learn how to think like a lawyer. You learn how to issue spot. You learn how to be, critical thinking, that sort of thing. They don't really teach you how to be a lawyer, which is, you need to understand how pleadings work. You need to understand how discovery works. Trial work, and then post-trial work, appellate work, which is what the Commonwealth Court is mostly involved with. All that stuff you learn after you graduate from law school. I mean, I had some clinicals that helped a little bit.
You're right.
Criminal clinicals where you go into court and you're supervised, that sort of thing, while I was at Temple, but very little of that. Mostly you learn on the job after you graduate from law school. So this was a great place to learn how to do civil litigation.
I don't want to sound cynical, but I guess you probably tend to deal with plaintiffs that are looking for a little cash payout from the government.
In Philadelphia?
In Philadelphia.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, so the classic setup in Philly when I was there, I did a lot of work downtown Philadelphia, car accidents that were being caused by SEPTA trolley rails. Oh. And the plaintiff's attorneys a lot of times wouldn't even try to figure out which, like most of the roads in Philadelphia are actually state highways. They've shifted the maintenance burden to the state taxpayer instead of the local taxpayer. So, Broad Street, Market Street, Chestnut, they're all state highways. And so a lot of plaintiff's attorneys, they would just file lawsuits against SEPTA, the city of Philadelphia, and PennDOT, and then sort of let the defendants figure out whose responsibility it was to deal with the particular problem. So
unreal. All righty, so that was how you got your start. Then what was next?
Well, my dad died. I had been there maybe 3 or 4 years. And I really enjoyed that job. But I started driving from Philly back to Erie. I was helping out with some family matters, that sort of thing. It's a long drive, as you may know.
Sure.
7 hours and change. And so I was looking for a transfer. The Pittsburgh Torts Office didn't have any openings, but this is now under Ernie Preate at this point. They opened an office in Meadville, Pennsylvania, for environmental crimes. So I became an environmental crimes prosecutor, state prosecutor doing just environmental crimes.
Wow. Okay, so you were a prosecutor doing environmental crimes. Yep. What comes under the concept of environmental crimes?
Most of what we were doing are sort of twofold. Under the Solid Waste Management Act, it's a felony to dispose of hazardous waste. So a lot of our cases were felony hazardous waste cases. The other type.
And does that refer to amount or placement? What makes it a felony as opposed to somebody dumping a couch in a field somewhere?
Yeah. So the way that the Solid Waste Management Act works is they actually create 3 types of solid waste. One is called municipal waste. That's your couch that you were just asking about, right? One is residual waste, which is non-hazardous waste that comes from an industry or a manufacturing facility or a farming operation, something like that. But it's non-hazardous, but it doesn't come from a household. So that's residual waste. That's a unique kind of solid waste to Pennsylvania. I'm not aware of any other state that has residual waste. And then there's hazardous waste. And hazardous waste, there's 2 types. It's either on a list. It's called listed hazardous waste, very creative name. Or it's what they call characteristic hazardous waste, and it has one of 4 characteristics. And so if it either has one of those 4 characteristics or it is listed on the list, then it's hazardous. And once it qualifies as hazardous waste, if you illegally dispose of it, meaning you don't have a permit to get rid of it, then that's a felony level offense in Pennsylvania.
So things like PCPs or, there's all these different things that come up in almost in normal operation of a foundry or factory. Sure. But you've got to deal with them the correct way.
Right. So like a classic thing around Meadville, for example, there's a lot of tool and die shops down there. So they use trichloroethylene or TCE as a degreaser.
Sure.
Okay. So that's a listed hazardous waste. It's F001. It happened, I'm kind of recalling 30 years ago, but that was the first on the list. It was TCE as a degreaser. Characteristic hazardous waste would be something like something that ignites easily, or something that's very corrosive, less than 2.5 on the pH scale or greater than 10 on the pH scale. All right, so there's 4 different, something that explodes as opposed to igniting.
Sure.
And then heavy metals. It's called TCLP, toxicity characteristic leachate procedure. You do a T-clip test to see if it's heavy in metals, and that's another characteristic. So sometimes when someone disposes of something, you don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. So we do the tests when we find it, and then we determine whether or not it was hazardous. But the idea is if you're generating waste of any sort, you're supposed to do a hazardous waste determination, and you figure it out as the generator what you're supposed to do with it, and then you properly dispose of it.
And there's service providers there to help you.
Yeah.
But if you choose to not, or the service provider is too expensive, you go around and you can get yourself in trouble with Matt.
This is what happens. It's always so environmental crimes is really a white collar crime.
Yeah.
Because all they're doing is trying to save money, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but when they dispose of it, it doesn't say Joe Smith and TCE.
Right.
So we have to try to figure out from at first the DEP labs will look at it, and then they'll start running tests to try to figure out what it is. And if it fails one of those characteristics, it becomes a hazardous waste.
Almost quite a bit of spelunking, some detective work, I would imagine.
Well, it was the environmental crimes section. I had 2 special agents and a secretary, and that's what we did. We would get a referral from the DEP, and then we would investigate it, and we would determine whether or not criminal charges should be brought.
Matt Wolford is with us here on Talk Erie. So fast forward to your current practice.
Yeah. Well, between the AG's office and there, I actually I got interested in the environmental stuff.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, so I went over to DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, learned how to do environmental law. Most is not criminal, as you can imagine. Mm-hmm. It's very administrative, regulations, all that sort of thing. And so I learned how to do that for 4 years as the water lawyer and the oil and gas lawyer for the Northwest region.
Wow.
And then I was getting ready to leave government service, and I was promoted to being in charge of the Northwest Regional Office of the Regional Council office in Meadville.
Gotcha.
So I did that for a few years, and then that was about 25 years ago I left and started my own practice here in Erie. I'm a solo practitioner, and most of what I do is dealing with the DEP.
You play defense for individual landowners and things?
Yeah,
or?
farmers,
Yeah.
landowners, oil and gas.
I mean, we actually have some high-profile cases around here, don't we?
We have, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it.
Yeah, I was involved with the cleanup of the International Paper Site, for example. I represented Presque Isle Downs, and so they bought 3 different properties. The one where the casino actually went was obviously one of the properties, and they had to put in a bridge up there, right? So there's permitting that goes with a bridge that goes over a stream because it's water of the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
And so and it's right next to a landfill, and so we had a couple issues with that. The IP site was bought as an alternate site, and in order to sell it, we cleaned it up first. And so under what they call Act 2, the Pennsylvania Land Recycling and Environmental Remediation Standards Act, which is why they call it Act 2, because it's much easier to say. So we cleaned the IP site up under that statute, and then the other site was there's a big sign out on the road. It says Dixie Trucking, but it used to be the Green Shingle.
Sure.
And so we cleaned that up too. There was a release of underground storage tank diesel fuel back in the 90s, and it was still lingering around. And when the tanks were closed in 2015, it became the responsibility of Presque Isle Downs to finish.
Oh, I didn't realize that they had that land.
Yeah.
That's the one that's been picked up by the Erie Redevelopment Authority, Erie County.
No, I think that was Hamel Green bought that one, and
Okay.
then there's an asphalt plant out there.
Oh, okay.
Right now.
It might be close though.
Probably close. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's where the McCain Business Park is. So I'm starting to understand why you'd be interested in this kind of this slate on the Commonwealth Court, because you've been playing in this sandbox now for your whole career, basically.
Yeah. So the Commonwealth Court, a lot of people don't know what it is. It's a mid-level appellate court. It's like a sister court to the Superior Court. Most people are familiar with the Superior Court. You have a criminal trial, goes through the Court of Common Pleas, gets appealed, Superior Court. You have a car accident case, goes through the Court of Common Pleas, Superior Court. What the Commonwealth Court is a highly specialized government court. It just deals with state and local government stuff. And so election law cases, zoning cases, eminent domain cases, environmental protection cases, cases dealing with sovereign immunity, which when I was back in Philadelphia, my first case in front of the Commonwealth Court was in 1988 because I was representing PennDOT, and it was appealed. We won at the Court of Common Pleas level. It was appealed to the Commonwealth Court. And so my first oral argument was in 1989.
Wow.
So I've been hanging around this court a long time. And as you and I were talking about before we went on the air, the trial court for the DEP, if you challenge a DEP action, what they do, they'll assess civil penalties, or they'll issue an order. It's called an administrative order. If you challenge that, it doesn't go to the Court of Common Pleas. It goes to the Environmental Hearing Board, which is the trial court for challenging DEP actions, and then from there it goes to the Commonwealth Court. So I've been around this court a long time in several different capacities. This court also can serve as a trial court sometimes. It's a very unique court, and I actually have they call that original jurisdiction as opposed to appellate jurisdiction.
That makes sense, yeah.
And you can sue like a Commonwealth agency. You can sue the DEP and challenge the constitutionality of a statute, for example. And I have one of those cases in front of the Commonwealth Court.
I was going to say, I wonder if all that back and forth in the 2020 election, when they were trying to decide whether they could extend taking the mail ballots for 3 days, that had to go through Commonwealth before it went to the Supreme Court.
That's correct. It did.
Wow. Why do you want to run? I mean, again, you know that it's difficult to run from Northwest PA because your name is not a common name, let's say, in Philly media or Pittsburgh media, right?
Right. No, it's very difficult to run from Erie County. I think we had a Supreme Court Justice Roberts.
Yep.
That was decades ago.
Yeah.
And Judge Joyce was on Superior Court. And I don't think we've ever had anybody from Erie elected to the Commonwealth Court.
Right.
Judge Giuliani was,
of course, Governor Ridge,
Yeah.
as far as a statewide election.
Yes, and it's hard.
That's really hard. Yeah.
But he did a great job, and they're still very fond of him down in southeast Pennsylvania. They talk about him a lot still.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, because part of my discussion with him is that I served in the DEP under the Ridge administration.
Okay.
And so and then it comes out that, wow, we love Tom Ridge. He was the guy that, what was his saying, that he was the guy that nobody knew about from a place
from a
nobody
place
cares
nobody,
cares
nobody had
about.
been to. Yeah.
Or that. Yeah. And it was good working in the Ridge administration, because what we were trying to do at the time is Pennsylvania was not doing well economically. And he thought that if we could, ensure that we have clean air and clean water, but also not destroy the economy while doing it, that would be a good thing. And so that was his mission. And he was rolling back some of the regulations. What happens is certain states can become more stringent than what the federal requirements are. You don't have to. You have to meet the minimum federal requirements, but you can become more stringent, and that's what Pennsylvania had done. And so his initiative, which was called Regulatory Basics Initiative, was to roll back our regulations to the federal standards to make it more attractive to manufacturers to come to Pennsylvania. He was also involved with some taxation issues too, and it was working. I mean, we went from, I think, 43rd in the country economically down into the lower 30s during his tenure.
Wasn't that kind of coming up? And you don't have to answer this if this is too sensitive, but this whole thing with the RGGI, with the Regional Greenhouse Gases Initiative.
Yes.
That seems like there's a lot of gnashing of teeth over that.
Yeah.
Because they want Pennsylvania out of the RGGI. At least a lot of forces do anyway.
Right.
On the right, especially.
Some want us out of RGGI. The issue there, and it went through Commonwealth Court, by the way.
Did it really? Yeah.
Of course, yeah, because it dealt with Commonwealth issues. And it went to the Supreme Court. And I watched oral argument on PCN, and the issue is whether or not the amount of money that's going to be generated by being part of RGGI is really a tax. Because if it's a tax, then it had to be approved by the legislature. And that's really what that case is all about. It's about how much authority does the governor have without the approval of the legislature. And that comes up in a number of contexts, not just RGGI. And those are the kinds of cases that the Commonwealth Court deals with all the time. So, for example, when COVID happened, the governor was ordering businesses to shut down, and people couldn't go to church and all that. Those cases went through the Commonwealth Court before they got to the Supreme Court. So,
why do you think you'd be? You say that you have a conservative judicial philosophy.
Yes.
That doesn't necessarily mean you're like conservative, but your approach is to that. Tell me about that.
Well, there's all kinds of labels that people use, and so you hear originalist or strict constructionist, or the one that I think most closely resembles my judicial philosophy is what they call judicial restraint. And basically the idea is you have respect for the rule of law, you uphold the Constitution, you apply statutes as written, and you don't legislate from the bench. And what that means is there are judges that they'll read a statute and they'll see what the result is going to be, and they don't like that result. And so they find a way to interpret, I'll put that in air quotes, some language in the statute to get a different result than what the legislature intended. Mm. And in my view, a court's job is to interpret in a manner that's consistent with what the legislature intended, because the legislature is the policy-making body, not the judiciary. If you want to run for General Assembly, go for it. And that's who sets policy. But if what you're doing is applying a statute, the job of the court, in my view, is that you should be trying to figure out what the intent of the legislature was and then apply it in that way. And we actually have a statute in Pennsylvania that requires that. And so I'm not doing anything new here. This is something that I've been doing since law school. Is, if I write a brief, this is what the legislature intended and this is what the court should do. And most courts do. And so it's not unusual for courts to take the position that this is how you should approach the law.
Well, especially, when you want a preferred result and you have basically a logjam at the legislative branch because you have a Republican Senate, a Democratic House. I mean, people are looking for those end arounds. It's like the veer or something like that. It's an option play, right?
It's frustrating.
Yeah.
But we still have 3 branches of government.
Yes. Yeah.
And they each need to stay in their lane. And so really that's what we're talking about. When I first graduated from law school, you used to see in opinions, like you'd see a concurring opinion or a dissenting opinion, and the judge would say, I don't like this result, but I'm constrained to agree with the majority because that's what the statute says. And by doing that, what they were doing is sending a signal to the General Assembly that, hey, maybe you want to revisit this because this seems like an unfair result, but we're kind of compelled to do this because that's what the statute says. I see less of that these days. I see more opinions where they just sort of reach a different result.
Right. Wow.
And courts seem to be looking for ways of interjecting their opinion instead of just following what the statute says. And so that is not what I will do. What I will do is I will ascertain legislative intent. And the concept of judicial restraint goes one step further. If you can resolve a case without reaching a constitutional issue, so in other words, someone's going to challenge a statute and they say, well, you can't follow this because it's unconstitutional. If there's a way to decide the case without getting to a constitutional issue, do that.
Yeah.
Because it really muddies the waters to jump into the Constitution and say, well, this is unconstitutional for this reason or that reason. And if you can decide a case without doing that, I think we're better off. We get more consistency in the law.
I'm down to my last minute with Matt Wolford. Tell folks how they can find out more about how you stand and maybe support you or what have you.
Yeah, well, I have a website, mattwolfordforjudge.com, and it has information about my background. And I think we posted my resume. If you're really looking for something to put you to sleep at night, you can resort to that. But it has information about me. It has my phone number. And if someone has a particular question, I take phone calls, and I'm more than happy to chat about whatever. So that's a good way. If you really have a burning question for me, pick up the phone and give me a shout.
It's Matt Wolford, WOLFORD for judge.com. Thank you for taking the time, and good luck. Stay safe on the trail there. A pretty big deal here.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. You got it. It is 4 minutes in front of 4.